Jo Frost, welcome to the Mom Room.
Thank you.
I'm so excited. So, if you guys are listening, which I know you guys all are, you know that in my stories on Instagram, I tagged Jo and I was like, like I wish Jo would come on the podcast. And she messaged me directly and was like, let's do it. So, here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. So excited to chat with you. But before we get into some of the more parenting focused questions, I wanted to go back to right when you started working in this field and understand like what led you to being interested in helping families and starting your career in this field.
Well, I think not to bore everyone because, my journey is well documented over the last 20 years. But, I've always been in the parenting field, and that's nearly 40 years now. And, helping families and the love of children is me, So publicly, people have known me now 20 years from my shows, my different types of formats. And those formats predominantly are all centered around healthy communication and relationships and helping families at a time of need so that they can restore their families. And so, really, my love of doing that and what inspires me to continue doing it on this much grander level it is children and family, being able to bring my expertise and to help families feel more empowered about the choices they make, to really bridge the gap between them understanding themselves first and then the relationships that they're having with their children, and to start having more critical thinking about how they choose to parent their own children and not necessarily auto parenting, which is, to take how they were raised. And every family, of course, takes the great bits and feels very strongly driven by avoiding the bits that didn't work for them. But I want parents to be in a space where they can look at the foundations as they are parenting and start to look at what they value, what those family values are, and really have more information under their belt, more wisdom, more expertise, so that they can become more confident in their journey. So, for me, that's an ongoing thing, right? 40 years in this professional field, 20 years publicly, and then some. And it continues for me to be able to do that in the many different mediums that families have become accustomed to me doing so, whether that's global seminars, headlining parental conferences, whether that's the many books that I've, penned, or the different types of shows in which I can creatively really help families in that capacity.
Did you ever think when you started out working one-on-one with families that it would end up being so big? Because now it's interesting, like you started out working one-on-one with families, but now you're able to reach so many more families on such a large scale.
Well, working one-on-one and privately consulting families certainly was the premise, the format for the well-known show Supernanny, because I was doing that already privately. And then the show Supernanny is really about my professional career doing that, as a parental expert, troubleshooting, helping families. And so there was no way of knowing that taking a one-on-one private consultation with families was going to lead to, obviously, the show that most people know me for, obviously, Supernanny, and to the extreme, the impact that it had. No, I had no idea whatsoever that was, going to happen. But I do know that when the opportunity was there, it was, something for me that I recognize would be very impactful because of the power of television and the medium of that. And it was important for me to make sure that that was done as authentic and with as much integrity as possible with each family. And, it's the shows, I say the shows because, I went on to make, several other shows beyond Supernanny. And they're in 149 territories already. They're already worldwide, So when social media came about over, should we say now, 12 years, 14 years, that it's been really quite heightened, and sort of began, that people started to watch repetitively the shows that became really family archives, because they were watched over and over again on YouTube or TikTok. But already the shows had made an impact. They had already hit across the world. So, those letters that would come in from Tonga, or from the far corners of Ireland, or places that you're like, wow, like Indonesia, people already reaching out. That's when you really realize, like, wow, like, the power of social media, the power of TV, that medium is one that you can do a lot of good with, when you're able to be very instrumental with your creative. And that's certainly what I did. I took something that I was extremely good at and was very well versed and experienced in, and was able to, transform really that into a space that created that impact.
When you look back at your career when you first started and you were working with families versus how you work with families today, would you say your strategies or how you think about parenting or how you help families, has it evolved or changed from when you first started till now?
Well, my techniques are my techniques.
Okay.
And they're tried, tested, and proven. So
Yeah.
my techniques I will always stand by, because I don't follow trend. I do what works.
I love this. I love this.
Yeah, I don't follow trends. I do what works for families. This is not a cooking show. It's not a DIY show like, oh, hey, I got the paint the wrong colour. Let me just go and buy another one. Or, oh, I put too much dressing in the salad. Make a new one. I'm helping real families with real challenges, real little tiny human beings, who are feeling somewhat very invisible at times and very frustrated and scared, and families that want the best. So, for me, it's really important that I give the families the help that they need and the strategies, the toolkit, the techniques that will work for them. And so that hasn't changed. My techniques will not change with respects to what's tried, tested, and proven for families. However, families evolve, right? The world evolves. The world is not the same place post-pandemic, right?
So true.
And so, the world evolves and family life evolves. And I will have always new strategies and techniques as I grow with families in an ever-evolving world, right? But I stand by all of my techniques. I do. And I feel very much someone right now in the world that is asking families to look in the middle, because we are in a world right now that's incredibly polarizing. We have two extremes, and we don't have enough reflection in being able to look in the middle. And what does that mean for us as families when raising our children? What does that mean for us as parents, forever evolving in a society and world with internal and external differences? And I think that's very important two things can exist at the same time. However, when we can take a world that's polarized and just step back for a moment and look to see how we can find more peace and more harmony in the middle, then I think we're getting the right balance of how we can have less stress in our lives. And we all want that. We want less stress.
I always think about everything, especially when it comes to parenting. Everything is so, like you said, it's black and white. People like to say this is good, this is bad, but nobody's looking at the nuance or the gray area.
Oh, yeah.
And that is an issue also with social media,
Oh,
because social
Renee.
media doesn't let you explain the nuance or the context of
Absolutely.
different situations.
Absolutely.
So like I get so
Preach,
fed up
preach.
with seeing yes.
Preach. I mean,
let me just
spot
like
on.
go on this rant here.
Yeah, you're spot
I
on.
get so fed up of certain accounts just, giving parents scripts. Like, oh, if your child does this, like say this.
Yes,
And
yes.
then everything will be better with a bow on top. And it's like, it's not working in the real world.
Correct.
And so that's the issue. It's like we're getting these little clips, 30-second clips about here's how to parent your child. But then we're so frustrated trying to implement these strategies and it's not working. And then we feel like shit as parents.
Correct. God, it's so refreshing to hear you say that. And
Yes.
it's very courageous, because what you speak of out in the world right now on social media is with much resistance and backlash, and those
Oh,
that
yeah.
want to cancel you because you're brave enough to talk about that. Nuance matters. Content matters, and the context at which we are talking about something. And social media does not give us the breath to unfold that. When you are looking at 30 seconds, 60 seconds, this is not a quick fix DIY. You
Yeah.
need to be able to have the length of these conversations to break stuff down and to be able to talk about the nuance of circumstances or situations or a topic, for it to carry any kind of gravitas, for us to be able to really contemplate what's being said. I do think it's the wonderful thing about podcasts, because you can have those lengthier
Yes.
conversations. You certainly can. And of course, you look at a 30-second clip, and again, you're being required by these accounts to just kind of squash everything in. And I struggle with that. I struggle with that. I won't do it. I won't do it unless I can explain in full. And even then, it can be lost. So you can't please everyone, and you can't expect everyone to get it, but you hope that enough do. And then there are other ways in which perhaps you can use your different accounts and platforms to have longer time in being able to explain. But it is a problem. It's very dangerous, because it can lead to a lot of misleading information when it comes to parenting, and that can be incredibly confusing for many. And if you look at my professional field, there are many professionals in this field that have no problem at all with not enough sensibility in recognizing the platforms that they are using, and what is necessary for that. I don't subscribe to scripts. I think it makes families less confident, because now they're
Yes.
having to worry about the lines that they're supposed to
Yeah.
remember in a moment where they're already frazzled, and in a
Yeah.
moment where they may be triggered. I mean, life is not a dress rehearsal where we get the lines exactly right. We
Yeah.
kind of learn on the job with parenting. We may have read a lot of theory, a lot of books, but it's not until we actually are parenting or mentoring older children in that space, in the trenches, do we really start to read between the lines and to understand the nuance of parenting, right? And so, again, this need for, please tell me what to say, tell me what exactly to say. Every child is different with respect to
Yes.
their personality and their temperament, including the parents, and their relationship is different to somebody else. And yes, we can talk about certain topics, and I do believe there are bullet pointers with respects to certain overall hot topics, like how can we talk to our children about this circumstance, or how can we help our children. But the scripts to me are a modern way of parenting that I just do not subscribe to, because I just don't believe it creates a competence that can then lead to a confidence in how parents continue on their journey in parenting. They have to be able to feel comfortable in their own skin and recognize where they may course correct or catch themselves and think, let me just backtrack here. Hold on a minute. I said this, but actually thinking about what you've just said, that makes sense to me. I can meet you halfway with that. I understand your
Yeah.
point of view. Where's the room for that? Where's the wiggle room? You've got to be able to have wiggle room as well. And you learn that in the moment. You learn that when it's happening. And each hour and each day is different. So that's the experience that you end up acquiring over the months and the years of raising your children. And that cannot be cheated. You have to live that. And I've had a lot of experience of living that with families, with children in their homes continuously, long before people were introduced to me on television, long before that,
Yeah.
17, 18 years, before the, 20 odd years, doing that with families. So thank you for bringing that up, Renee. Thank you, because it's very
Yeah.
much needed to be said.
I always question, I don't know if it's like my background in psychology, like I'm always questioning things. And for a while, I was just getting fed up. Like I'm in a situation with Milo, and instead of being myself and doing what I think feels right, I'm, scrolling my mind, trying to be like, okay, what was I supposed to say in this moment? And then started to be like, this is stupid. Like
And you
this is not
mentioned,
working.
you've just mentioned something there as well, what I want to mention. If you're thinking about what I'm supposed to be saying in the moment, then you're not in the moment.
Yeah.
You're actually not presently in the moment, because you're anxious and panicked about what you think you were supposed to say. And it's very important that parents are in the moment, that they are present, that children do feel like they have your attention, your presence, and your attentiveness to better those communication skills with your children. I mean, that's part of being able to emotionally connect with your children, that leads to more emotional intimacy with your child, so
Yeah.
that your child has built that trust with you to be able to feel that they can say what they are heart feeling, because the space is safe enough for them to be able to do that. So you have to be present. You're not present if you're scrambling with stage fright, wondering what your next line is.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, you say the thing and it doesn't work out the way that you wanted to.
Then what?
And now you're like, shit. Now what? I don't have a script for how what just happened here. Like now I'm screwed.
Yeah, what's that?
Yeah.
It's true. What's that saying? I can't even I always post it and I can't remember it right now. Skilled surfers, learn best in rough seas, right?
Yeah.
And that is the wave of parenting, right? That you have to be able to, learn on that board when you're in different types of, ocean terrain, right? And that's what gives you the skill set. It's kind of like you can learn basics and foundation, and I think that's really important. I do that too. I think that's a necessity. However, it's kind of like driving a car. You'll learn, especially if it's gear stick, exactly how to drive your car, but you really don't learn how to read the road, offense, defense, recognizing the experience once you're on the road,
Yeah.
once you're on the road. So, for all professionals out there, I'd like to say that, of course, we hope that one is doing their best to help families and they're doing it from what they believe is their best perspective in doing so. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with the scripts though, because I do think it does create a deeper anxiety for families to feel that that's the only thing they can do. And for me, it's really about families garnering more intuitive awareness for themselves, becoming more in tune with themselves, becoming more in tune with their children, but understanding that themselves as parents so that they can trust that. Because that's
Yeah.
what I want
It's
parents to do, is
interesting
to trust
because like
themselves.
it's a relationship. Like there's two people. It's me and it's my child. And so to think that there's a handful of scripts that I'm going to use to say to him, like, imagine I did that with my husband. Like,
Yeah.
that's, if you think about it in any other relationship, it's so bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see sentences that I think are prompts that I believe can be very helpful in diffusing or opening up conversations, but entire scripts of what to say, I don't see it. Well, I don't think it is helping. We
Yeah.
still, I know that from the emails that I receive.
Yeah.
If I'm
No,
being really honest,
I'm sure. Okay. I have a question about authoritarian versus authoritative. I feel like on social media, there's so much content surrounding different styles of parenting.
Can you believe
And
that people are still struggling with this?
okay, I haven't looked into it much, but my issue is like the labels of things. Like you have to be a gentle parent. You are this parent. You are this kind of parent. Like, is that
Let me
how,
unpack
like,
that for you. I think it's
yes,
interesting. Let me
please.
unpack it for you. From where I believe you're coming from. I think that understanding those types of parenting styles, neglectful, permissive, authoritarian, authoritative, is a great base. It's a great foundation. I still can't believe that we are living in a day and age where people do not understand the difference between authoritative, right, which is assertive behavior. It's a two-way street. It's about emotionally connecting with your child, considering what they are saying, but still leading as a parent.
Setting boundaries.
And boundaries, of course, right? Two, authoritarian, which is my way or the highway,
Yeah.
right? It's a harsher approach because there's no consideration, there's no communication. What the child feels, lock it up, throw away the key, right? And so I do believe those sort of four sort of styles as such allow us to have a base for parents to say, well, actually, I need to be more of this, or I definitely came from this upbringing, or as an adult, I can be aware that maybe my mum was more of this pacifying for the over harshness of this style of parenting. But when you talk about gentle parenting, we're talking about trend here, like
Okay.
tiger mum and dolphin dad, and you know what I mean. Like it's a label to really open up the conversation of a consideration of what a parent should be within the realms of the whole picture of parenting, right? So I do
Yeah.
think that those four sort of boxes give us an awareness, an education, and a ground sort of base, right? The rest of, to me, are trends. Like right now, nobody knows what gentle parenting is. They're all arguing on.
Nobody understands. Nobody
Nobody really
understands.
understands what gentle parenting is. They're all arguing on social media. One's saying, "Well, it's not giving consequences." The others are saying, "Well, it is about giving consequences and boundaries, but it's also about meeting your child." Sounds to me like a rebrand of my work, minus the time out.
Well, I was going to say, isn't authoritarian, isn't that the same as, because when you just described it briefly, that sounds like gentle parenting. Like you're considering the child, you're validating
Authoritative.
what they're feeling.
Authoritative.
Sorry, authoritative, yes.
So I would say that gentle parenting, from if we're saying right now that gentle parenting is about emotionally connecting with your child, listening, communicating in a way that allows them to feel very heard and seen of how they feel, implementing boundaries and consequences. If we're saying that's gentle parenting, then what do you think people have been watching over the last 20 years with me?
I know.
Right? It's the same.
I know.
It's the same thing. It's a rebrand, if that's what we're saying. Apart from this, those that talk about gentle parenting want to dismiss a time out, right? And say we do natural consequences. Well, so is my teachings, natural consequences. They're not,
Yeah.
It's not just a timeout, which is a reset and boundary, right?
Yeah.
It's also maybe a natural consequence for something that's happened. But the problem is that it was a bad marketing ploy to rebrand work that I'm already and have already established with families over the last 2 decades. And now everybody is confused about it and they're all arguing about it on social media. And now we have families that are not even putting in boundaries and, following through on consequences. And let's add something else to that, language, because language matters. So maybe 10 years ago, we would use the word consequence, discipline, and punishment all as the same.
Right.
So like, oh, you're going to get punishment for that. Or you're going to get discipline for that. Oh, there's going to be consequences when mum sees that you've done that. Now there's been this separation on social media. And we've also blanketed the word time out and said, oh, it's punishment and authoritarian, right? And when people think of the word time out, they think of me. So it's clearly, a narrative to ostracize my work, right? With regards to my version of a timeout, which is very different to the 1900s when children were not seen and heard, when they were placed in a corner with their head like this and their face in the corner, humiliated by everybody else in the class, were not spoken to or heard, right? And that was an authoritarian style.
Yeah.
That's not my version. That's not what I teach. Never have done. But if you look at the false information out there and you look at my name, you will see Joe Frost, authoritarian. I'm nowhere near an authoritarian. I'm very assertive. I'm authoritative, energetically immersive with my therapy in how I help families, but very intuitive too. And so my work is about bringing families to a place of more self-awareness, more emotional connection, more assertive behavior to uphold their boundaries, to reset, and to make sure that a child has accountability. And you can't do that until you understand as a parent the different types of emotional meltdowns that your child has, right? Because there are 3 different types of heightened emotions. And over my nearly 40 years, children will have meltdowns that are very emotional. And those emotional standpoints can come from a place of maybe grief, a loss of a pet, maybe a new child, a new addition to the family, maybe the beginnings of school, and there's anxiousness attached to that, right? So we can see heightened behavior through an emotional feeling, right? Or sometimes it's me, myself, and I, right? It's what I call a mop tantrum. Children want their way, they want it, they don't care, and they have been taught exactly how to behave to get it, right? And then there's situational. Could be a child not wanting to leave a birthday party and behaves a certain way, right? Whenever you've seen me help families on Supernanny, predominantly those families were either authoritarian or permissive. The child had learnt how to hit and kick and punch and slap and stamp their feet for exactly what they wanted. Parents never upheld any boundaries. And so my teachings was to bring this, again, polarized parenting of authoritarian or permissive and find the middle ground of authoritative, right? And so again, when you spend 200 hours with each family and all the audience get is 42 minutes, they're the ones who are making the judgment. Now, some, well, many actually, I say some, millions around the world, get it. They understand it. And then there are those that will just pick it apart anyway, right? And so we hope that they can read the books and learn more from reading the books as well to aid alongside the shows that they're working, that they're watching, right? So again, it's all in the detail and the nuance in how you look at a family 360 and the work that needs to be done in order to get to a place of being able to bridge the gap with your children. So if you take my shows, people were like, oh, she's helping the parents with the children. She's helping the parents with the children. She's helping the parents with the children. Oh, actually, she's not. She's helping the children with their parents. The more I watch, the more I realize she's actually helping the children with their parents. It's the parents. They're the ones that need to learn. And it's the parents who think it's their children. Jo went in and she connected with the children. She heard them when they were invisible. She saw and felt what they were feeling. And then she bridged the gap there. There's a difference. There's a really big difference.
What do you think, like when you're, even seeing people talking online or working with families, or when you go to these big parenting conferences, what do you think most families today with young children are, like, what are their biggest challenges today?
I still think today that we still have the universal evergreen challenges, because I believe families always will, because it's the first time that they're going through their experience with their children, whatever age they are, right? So if you think about that first year, it's the emotional journey, the transition, the newness, the change, the emotional support that families need. If we look at the toddler years, we look at so much, right? In respects to that foundation being laid, for these little people that have their own minds, say what they feel, right? And that challenges us, right? Because these little toddlers are now walking around, they know what they want, then they don't know what they want. And, you cut the toast in triangles. I wanted squares. I want the red cup, not the blue cup. No, I want the red cup, right? And we, hopefully we've read a good enough amount of material that we can start implementing some foundation for these children, right? So that we can create healthier habits for them, right? That's going to set them up good, right? And the importance because of their development, the importance for their development, right? So I still think that we are in a space where parents will be talking about overcoming sleep issues, right? Or the behavior that they find very troubling because they don't quite know right now that they need to uphold certain boundaries or to be less controlling or to allow children choice in certain areas. So that's always evergreen. But today in the modern world, we're dealing with a mixture of external and internal, which is that we have now a space where families are not being supported in the way that they need to be supported externally. And that puts an awful amount of pressure internally for families at home with their children. And the impact of that becomes electronics being the babysitter. And that for me is a huge problem because it means that our children are exposed to cell phones and iPads as young as 6 months, 8 months. That's incredibly scary. Because when we look at the fact that the brain is not even developed, right? And that we are in that brain development stage from 0 to 5 years, that's an incredibly, for me, very scary as a
I feel
professional.
like, especially during quarantine,
Yes.
like I wasn't working from home. I had just finished my PhD and I was in quarantine. Milo was like 18 months old. So I didn't have the pressure of trying to do full-time work at home,
Yes.
but also watch my 18-month-old. My husband's a doctor, so he was working outside the house. And I remember thinking, like, how are families managing right now to work from home, but then also take care of children full-time? Like, and I feel like a lot of screen time habits probably developed in those years.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I think the last 4 years certainly elevated because we had people dying at a rate that was just unconscionable and families not having, I believe, in some countries, even great leadership with how to navigate
Yeah.
this unprecedented global pandemic. And the sheer panic and fear. I mean, I remember, I just come off of filming another season of Supernanny, and I shut shop 2 families before finishing my complete run because I could see that it was getting dangerous. And I'm like, we've got to protect the families, got to protect the crew, got to protect myself. And I knew exactly what I was going into for those last 4 years. Since 2020, right up until now, I have been helping families through that pandemic, the doctors, the nurses, the teachers, the families, right? Helping them through the question of how do we create healthy boundaries that allow me to get some work done and also meet the necessities. And I think a lot of families have jumped 5 steps ahead. You're like, how are they going to get this done? And I'm like, hey, look, the only thing right now that you need to worry about is keeping your family alive. It's alive, right? Meaning we're going to take this 1 step at a time, 1 day at a time. But here are some of the core essentials that do need to be put in place. And I think at that time, it really highlighted what the priorities should be. Where were the boundaries going to be? Where were the space bubbles going to be with respect to even in your own home? How accommodating were bosses going to be in businesses to allow some flexibility? And we're still dealing with that now, right, as families, because half of the numbers were women, that left their jobs and came back home, right? They were at home with their kids. And so how were people dealing with it? They were dealing with it with a lot of stress. And a lot of families went under the radar as well those that were in homes, where there were danger, so it was a very difficult time for everybody, and then more difficulty for others that were living in circumstances that were also abusive, that were going under the radar with respect to, having the support that they needed, right? But certainly those years led to social media increasing and families wanting to feel connected with the outside world, right? Because we were all shut down. And so the outside world became the virtual landscape, right? But now we need to create the balance of going back outside into the physical world, because our heads are still too much stuck in the virtual world, right?
Yeah.
And we need to come back to the space of socialization and healthy face-to-face communication and joining up with clubs and groups again and community in the physical world as well, right? Because it's too much in the virtual world. So I'm not saying that it doesn't have its place with respect to how families have connected with other families maybe around the world, and with groups and community links and chat rooms. But there is nothing like being in front of someone, as we all know, when we couldn't be. Nothing better than being in front of somebody and feeling their energy as they smile empathetically to a story that you feel somebody heard, right? To a hug when you need it, the magic of hugs. To somebody just being able to hold your hand and go, you'll get through this, and I'm here for you too. The delight in just watching the children, right? Just play together and get dirty and be grounded in just nature. For parents who are listening, the swings are lonely. The slide is lonely. The roundabout, the apparatus, it's lonely. Parks need to be filled with children on bicycles and children with sticks and Wellington boots and puddles and other parents saying hello to another parent after school and children all playing and taking time. I mean, just the delight of, as I talk to you and I hear the noise of that and the warmth of that and what that feels physically, that cannot be replaced virtually. It cannot.
Yeah.
And we do need the balance.
I do feel like we've lived in two neighborhoods before we moved to this house when Milo was little. And the last two neighborhoods that we lived in, everybody just like kept to themselves. Like there was no like community feel. This neighborhood is 10 times different. There's kids playing outside all the time. We're really good friends with our neighbors. They have kids Milo's age. They're like coming to our door all the time. Milo's over at their house all the time. I love it so much. Like the way it has made our quality of life so much better to just have other families around where you can just be like, oh, hey, I got a package. Like, can you go put it in our garage? Yeah. Like it's life-changing.
It builds the trust in a community. Yeah. You all look out for one another. Look, the community is what we call in other parts of the world, the tribe, right? And so how do we change that? We all have to do our part. We can't just sit in our homes and think, oh, that neighbour's not really said anything to. We have to do our part, like knock on the door. Yeah. Knock on the door, go, hey, hi. I'm from next door. I've just moved in, or I don't even think we've spoke. We're like passing ships. Hey, I made some of this. I just thought, look, we share through, gifts of a pumpkin or, flowers or, cookies or something you've made. I mean, look, it's very much, very American in that tradition, right? But, when you create a world where it became smaller for people to move out, and then some people forced out, meant that it brought back, families that were forever changing in the community. And so how do you create something that's closer knit so that there's this trust and bond where we have a sensibility of, it's not about my child, it's about all of our children. It's about all of us as parents. Even if you don't have kids, even if you
Yeah.
don't have children, the mindset that it's about our families,
Community. Yeah.
our children, our, not me, myself, and I. So we all have to play our part, I believe, in being able to contribute to that. And the smallest of things make a huge difference. Sometimes that can be a myth. People think that the smallest of things really won't count. And if everybody does the smallest of things, they really are the biggest of things,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for a community and for a neighbour, you know. But we have to do our part. We really have to do so. And
Yeah.
and and I know that in many countries it's not the same, right? We know that in certain countries there may be more of a sense of community, and even the grassroots of how government run, the leadership of government, and how they really empathetically start to change policies and implement more resources with funding to build a society up from the ground, because that's where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it's at. And so your vote matters wherever you are, right? Because it's what you can do. But I don't want people to lose hope in what they can also do in their own homes, because there are
Yeah.
very small, tangible things you can do in your own home that make a huge difference to your family over time. And we mustn't lose sight of that. We mustn't lose sight of, well, you know, it's just never going to change out here. This is the country we live in. No, you can make a difference. You can
Mm-hmm.
make a difference today. And if everybody
Even in
thought
your
like that,
own little community,
yeah,
like you
absolutely.
can start something.
Absolutely, absolutely, you can. You know, in my own neighbourhood, you know, a couple that are first time parents. I made them meals for 2 weeks, 2 weeks,
Wow.
so that, you know, babies come along, you know, and let's face it, it's going to be sleeping and nursing and recovery, right? And how their family support, right? And they don't have a lot of family where they are. Yeah. I was like, hey, this, I can do this. And made them 2 weeks of meals, lunches and dinners for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That will help.
That helps a lot. And I do think part of it is that so many of us do not live near our families anymore.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It's kind of, if to some degree, you know, the world became a smaller place where, you know, families moved away and wanted to explore either other countries or different states in America. And so they did that. And then again, externally, we can't really ignore in America that inflation and the prices of things
Mm,
have really started to make families think about where they live.
mm-hmm.
Because, you know, at the end of the day, when you're looking at a crisis of affordable childcare and, you know, one pay packet, right? If you have made a decision that one of you is going to stay at home because of those circumstances, then you've got to start looking at what that means with respects to rents or mortgages or property taxes or all the rest of the shenanigans that come in just being able to keep your head above water. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, you're now looking at different states in how you can thrive instead of keep feeling like you're surviving, you
Yeah.
know. And so there's a lot of external work that needs to change with respects to how our government support us as family, and at the same time parallel, what can we do in our own homes to make the smallest of differences that are bite-sized and tangible, that over time will make a big difference. And you can start that today. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's the work that I do continuously with families, you know. And that work is not try it, it might work. What I'm giving families is do it. It will work. you
Yeah.
know? It's a big
Tried and
difference.
true.
Big difference.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. I'm so happy that I tagged you in my story to come on. And
Thank you.
you made it happen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where can people find you online? And is there anything that you have coming up that we can look forward to, that you can share?
Not that I can share much right now. I'm a little bit mum's the word, but
Oh, okay.
there is stuff that will be coming. And
Okay.
families can find me on joefrost.com. As if you go to my website, if you're like, I want change, I want to change this, I'm like gusto and ready. You can go to joefrost.com and you can receive my private help there. And on my accounts, Joe Frost, the social media, whether that's TikTok, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, I'm always putting out information with things that will be coming up and stuff. So yeah, watch this space. There is, I'm in a lot of work right now, to be able to give that to
Awesome.
families. So just continuing, with the work that I'm doing,
Amazing. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for coming on.
Oh, I appreciate. Thank you very much.